So let's talk about IRBs, why they're so important, what could be tedious, but why they need to be part of any researcher's training. Back in the day, in the 1950s, and even earlier in the United States, as well as in Europe, scientists did not have any regulations to run experiments on human subjects, people of color, and even people with disabilities. This ran into many crimes, but also in the abuse to the vulnerabilities of people across Europe and the US. Even in Latin America, until a couple decades before, we didn't have IRBs, and people were largely exposed to experiments that can harm their health, mental health, and well-being. In this way, for example, the origins of IRB go back to the aftermath of World War II. In Nuremberg trials, mostly they were exposed by the Nazis committed to Jewish people in concentration camps in the name of medical research. These trials neglected the need for ethical guidelines, but also put into the spotlight how it is important to regulate and train scientists in the correct management and ethical management of people vulnerabilities with the knowledge we have. In this process, it's very important to acknowledge the privilege as a researcher you have. You have higher education, in this point by undergraduate level, but probably later on you will advance in your career towards a master's or even a PhD. As you advance in your education, you also gain privilege of knowledge that usually people do not have. So you might be able, if you manage that unethically, to trick them into a specific performance of practices that only benefit you and even can harm them in the long haul. In the United States, the modern IRB system was formalized in the 1970s, given the response of several accusations to scientists in cases of the Tuskegee syphilis study, where Black African Americans were forced to be injected different viruses, causing them syphilis and then the death. So African American workers of fields were injected syphilis, and then they pass it on to their families, and even children were born with this issue. This diagnosis was part of a study, but also was conducted by the US Public Health Service. So imagine a whole government inflicting harm in a segment of a population. There's even a movie about this that I will put down so you can see it if you want to. In 1974, the National Research Act in the United States created the creation of a commission for the protection of human subjects and behavioral research. In this commission also used the reports of the Belmont Report in 1979 to use this knowledge into specific principles of how to manage people. Currently, any scientist working even on undergrad level, even on school, need to get a license called the CT license or the CT program that is available through different institutions. For us, it's available through the University of Miami. Sometimes it doesn't have any cost. It's an online certification that you can get that I'll put some resources for you, and also adds up to your CV. So following these guidelines, you will get online training of what's ethical and what's not ethical, and how to manage the identity of participants, how you're going to manage any possibility of danger for participants in the process. Let's say if you're doing a psychological study about trauma and you have to interview people about issues they had in the past or how they felt, and they might get triggered in the process, you will have to have a protocol of having somebody to support them across the process to feel protected, but not to get triggered by participating in the issue. Also, the IRB process looks into specific guidelines, how to compensate people for the time they're participating with you. It is not ethical to call a person even for 1 hour of their time if you're not going to compensate them. So as part of the research process, you will have to plan compensations that are expensive as much that you can bias people into giving you the answers you want to get, but rather compensating the time. Usually people get paid for 1 hour, like, I don't know, 10, 15, $20, or you give them a gift card that they can use in the way they want to. And also sometimes snacks and things like that. In the case of medical research, a compensation can also be a medical checkup or a specific ways of how to use a specific technology and how your knowledge could be put in service of them. So it's not only recruiting people for 1 hour of the time and going back to them all the time, but also having the right management of their identity, how you're going to protect that the data is not connected to the identity of people, how you're going to code your participants in a way that they are going to be treated ethically in the process, but also you are not going to make public somebody said something that can put in danger their reputation, or also they can get harmed in any specific way. So please follow the resources, and the class activity is going to be focused on IRB.